Welcome to the President's Forum podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Smith. Today, I'm excited to welcome Van Davis, the new Executive Director at WCET, the WCET Cooperative for Educational Technologies, and the newest impact partner of the President's Forum. Van is a nationally recognized leader in higher education with deep expertise in digital learning, public policy, and educational innovation. We're thrilled to collaborate with him and the WCET team to advance student-centered solutions in higher education. Van, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with y'all today.
Hey, let's start with a bit of background for our audience, Van. Can you introduce WCET and share how it fits into the broader higher education landscape?
Sure thing. So WCET stands for the WCET Cooperative for Educational Technologies. We are an international organization. We're a little unique in that we are an international organization that is housed within one of the 4 regional compacts. We're housed within WCET, which is the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education. But at WCET, our focus really is on digital learning, and we focus on the intersection of the policy and practice and advocacy for digital learning. And we believe that's critical because we think that digital learning is a key towards expanding educational access and success for both faculty and students. We have a little over 450 members, mostly institutions. In fact, many of the President's Forum members are a part of WCET, which is one reason we're so excited to be joining the family. And the rest of our members are other nonprofits that are interested in digital learning, as well as a handful of educational technology vendors.
Right. Well, you mentioned, Van, that you've become part of the family. WCET has become an impact partner of the President's Forum, and it makes a ton of sense because our member overlap is significant. As we kick off this impact partnership, what are some of the opportunities that you see that we can address for our members together?
Sure. So, the C in WCET stands for cooperative, and we take that value really seriously. One of our critical missions is to create opportunities for collaboration and cooperation amongst our members, but it's also extended to creating opportunities for collaboration and cooperation with like-minded organizations. And so I think that there's a couple of ways where I'm really excited to see where this relationship goes. I'm excited to find ways to be able to amplify the good work that President's Forum institutions are doing, especially since so many of them are already a part of WCET. But I also think that we have a shared interest in federal regulatory policy. One of the critical areas that WCET focuses on is that policy piece. And I think that's probably what people know us the most for, is our policy work. And I think that we share some of the same policy aims and some of the same policy concerns as the President's Forum. And I think that there's going to be some really interesting and good ways that we can work together and amplify our ability to move the needle around regulations around distance education, particularly at the federal level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's an issue that we have both worked on pretty extensively in the past, and that's competency-based education. Yep. What can you share with the President's Forum members about CBE? What about recent developments, maybe best practices that our institutional leaders should be keeping an eye on?
So CBE is something that's near and dear to my heart. Earlier in my career, I was at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, where I developed the first baccalaureate CBE programs at public institutions in the state of Texas. And in fact, the coordinating board was one of the first members of CBEN. So I've been in the CBE arena for a while now, and it's something that's still really dear to me. There's a couple of things that I'm excited about around CBE. I'm really excited to see where AI takes us. I think that
Right.
AI has this unique ability to more easily dial in resources for student learning and personalize resources. I think the other thing that it has the ability to do is to make it easier for students to engage in questioning and answering and a more integrative way of learning. I think we forget sometimes how intimidating it can be for a student to engage in that sort of back and forth with a faculty member or a mentor. Um, and AI has the potential to take that dis-ease out of the equation. The other thing that I really am excited about around CBE. For several years, I served as the secretary on the board of Peloton U, which is a 501c3 based here in Austin. And Peloton provides personalized support for students who are enrolled in competency-based education programs. And they really do that boots on the ground student support services. And I think that it's one of the things that I find so fascinating with that model and excited about that model is that it opens up who can be involved in the learning process. And so it's not just, it really becomes a community approach to education and to student learning. And I think that it's easier for that to happen perhaps with CBE than it is with more traditional degree programs. And I also think that,
Right.
that the bigger we can create the student support community, then the better off those students are going to be. And so I'm excited to see where that model goes.
It's interesting that a couple of the things that you've mentioned are about the community of education and learners getting a more personalized education, having assets to drive that. It's kind of counterintuitive to what people think about digital education opportunities and online, facilitated by technology. It seems lonely. It seems like you're on your own island.
Yeah.
You're not surrounded in person by a teacher and other students. And a lot of people in the past have thought that that is the opposite of what you're just describing. Have we seen a sea change here? Are we to the point where the narrative around technology and technology-enabled education is changing? Do you think that people are starting to think of innovation in technology in education as driving kind of a personalized education format?
I hope so. I say hope so though, because I know if you paid attention to last year's negotiated rulemaking, one of the things that we heard, unfortunately, from more than one of the negotiators were some of those pervasive old myths of distance education and digital learning is not the same quality as face-to-face. And
Right.
that is frustrating beyond belief. I think many of us have sat in classrooms or taught in classrooms where we had 100 or 200 or 500 even students in a large lecture hall. There was no regular and substantive interaction in those large lecture courses. That didn't happen.
Right.
Yet, with distance education, we know that there's regular and substantive interaction. There has to be regular and substantive interaction in order for those programs to be eligible for Title IV financial aid. So I think the narrative is slowly shifting, but I'm afraid that we still have more to do in countering that old false narrative that distance education is somehow less than or is not a gold standard. And I think that,
Right.
that many of our learners, I mean, when you look at some of the more recent surveys, I mean, it's clear that our learners are choosing digital learning. And in many cases, they're choosing that over face-to-face for a whole variety of very good reasons.
That is true. I mean, the survey data is pretty conclusive on
Yeah.
that we're seeing so many more students opt in to technology-enabled education over, set place and
Yep.
time traditional education.
And we have tools now with digital learning and technology-enabled education that really do allow us to have that interaction. I mean, one of the great things is that you have the opportunity for 24/7 interaction. You're
Right.
not confined to a time and a place anymore. And that, I think, actually expands the opportunities for interaction rather than limiting those opportunities for interaction.
Van, is technology going to force regulatory changes to the regular and substantive rule?
I think so. I think we're already seeing it. I think what's going to be interesting around regular and substantive interaction is, unfortunately, we've for the last 8 or 10 years have been playing regulatory whiplash as we vacillate between Republican and Democratic administrations.
Right.
And so I think that technology is going to force us to have hard conversations in higher education about what regular and substantive interaction looks like for all students. My hope is that we can have those conversations sooner rather than later so that we're not in this sort of ping pong back and forth between what one administration thinks regular and substantive interaction is versus what another administration thinks it is.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. Regular and substantive shouldn't be a political issue.
No, it should not.
It really shouldn't. The Republicans and the Democrats shouldn't have different positions on this. What we're talking about is innovation,
Yes.
and the requirements to keep up with innovation and policy. They're set. It's no administration can get around that.
No.
And really it's about, if you want to be able to personalize education, if you want to be able to use tools that can decrease costs, we've got to figure out a way in the regulatory process that isn't prevented. So, hey, I want to use that to transition to affordability.
Sure.
How are technologies now impacting affordability? And is there a future where education gets better and cheaper?
I hope there is. So two things here. When I was at the coordinating board and helped develop the first CBE programs, some folks may remember that they were colloquially called the $10,000 bachelor's degree programs, because the governor at the time challenged the state of Texas and institutions to create $10,000 bachelor degree programs. And we were able to do that. And we were able to do that because we were able to leverage technology to scale programs. We were able to leverage it to develop curriculum. We were able to leverage it to disseminate that curriculum and be able to use a different instructional model to scale a program. And once you scale it, then you can begin to get those costs down. I think the challenge around cost and price of distance education right now is twofold. It's that we're not significantly changing the labor model. We're still using that for most institutions, not all. Many of the President's Forum institutions, I think, have done a really incredible job of shifting the labor model. But higher ed in general still uses the same old labor model, regardless of what the modality is.
Right.
And that's really frustrating. The other thing that I think is happening is that we have disconnected the cost and the price of distance education. Earlier, or late last year, earlier this year, WCET released a cost and price study of distance education. And one of the things that we found in that was that we continue to see this disconnect between the cost of distance education and the price. And we asked our respondents to look at a number of different cost markers. And what we found was in most of those markers, the overwhelming majority of them, the cost of distance education versus face-to-face was either the same or less. There were 6 markers where it was more. And those areas probably won't surprise anyone. Out-of-state regulations, technologies, creation of learning materials, instructional design. Those were some of the ones where it cost more. But
Yeah.
the problem was what we heard over and over again, both in the survey data and in the follow-up interviews, and in the open responses that we got, was that it didn't matter what it cost, that somebody else completely outside of the distance education arena was setting the price. And that in many cases, the savings that were being created through distance education were not going back into those degree programs, but rather it was subsidizing other face-to-face programs within the institution.
Right. Makes total sense that those are your findings. Yeah, I can see that. Very, very interesting. I do think that there is a massive connection between technology, successful technology implementation and cost.
There is.
And quality, frankly.
There is.
So, yeah. So, but to your point, too much of that savings subsidizes less effective models. And it's hard for the consumer to realize that savings because, those savings are just being reinvested into traditional education that requires, a subsidy to operate at this point.
That is exactly what we saw was going on. And until we deal with the labor, until we deal with scalability, and until we get a better connection between the cost and the price of these programs, I think we're going to have a hard time realizing the savings that quality technology can create for our students.
Yeah, absolutely. Van, I want a final question to be about looking to the future.
Sure.
As you look to the future, look out a decade, 2035. What do you see as the greatest challenges, or you can pick the greatest opportunities for higher education gains over the next 10 years? Give me what you think a landscape of higher ed could look like 10 years from now with the education technology that we're seeing hit the market right now.
Well, I think AI is going to be a game changer in ways that we really aren't even comprehending yet. I think as we begin to see AI models and agents being developed, and as we begin to see an ecosystem of agents developed so that they're able to communicate with each other, we have the opportunity to really provide highly personalized, just-in-time assistance to students at every point in the student life cycle, whether that be before they're enrolled, whether that be around financial aid, whether that be around course decisions and advising, tutorial work, helping students find internships, helping students enter the job market. I think that we have an opportunity to really begin to develop highly personalized systems. And one of the things that we know is that the more we can personalize a system, the more successful that student is going to be, because they're going to get the support that they need when they need that support. So I do think AI is going to be a game changer. I think it also has an opportunity to really begin to change that cost-price equation. That we do have the opportunity, especially as AI becomes cheaper, and as we begin to see this ecosystem of agents developed, to really begin to improve student retention. When we improve student retention, that means that we're going to be able to spend less money on getting students in the door. And that's also going to play into the reducing costs. So I think that we're going to have an ecosystem of technologies that are going to surround the student before they're in the door and after they're out of the door, because we're also going to be dealing with lifelong learning. I think that that's one of the other huge opportunities and challenges that higher ed has. We have close to 38 million adults now with some college credit and no credential. We have to get those students back in the door. We have to get them back in so that they can finish what they started. It's going to be critical for our economies, and quite frankly, it's going to be critical for our institutions as that traditional age student population falls off the cliff. And so I think that's also one of those opportunities and challenges to really rethink how we support students, when we support those students, and how we engage with them as lifelong learners. And if we can do that, it's a game changer. It's not just is it a game changer for this country, but it's a game changer for families. I mean, I started my career as a history professor, and I worked a lot with post-traditional students. And I will never forget, this is when it clicked for me, is I was at a small historically Black college here in Austin, and I had a retiree who was in my class finishing her degree. She had worked for the city of Austin for decades, had taken retirement, and then decided to come back and finish her degree. And she was in my U.S. survey course. And I pulled her aside after class one day, and I loved having her in there. And I asked her, though, I said, I love having you in this class, but why now? You don't need a degree for your job. You're retired. Why did you decide to come back now? And I will never forget what she told me. She said, because my grandson needs to see that somebody in our family can get a college degree. And if we can do that, if we can get these learners back in so that they can finish what they started, it's going to change the lives of generations of families, not just those immediate students.
Absolutely. I love your optimistic vision of 2035. I mean, the issues that you've addressed here, we could see personalized education at scale. We could see very disruptive models that could bring price way down. We could see communities who traditionally haven't been well served by the current system being finishers, showing that every individual has a pathway to opportunity. That's like an overwhelmingly optimistic vision of where education can go with technology today. And we share your vision with that and are looking forward to being an impact partner with you.
We are really excited to be working with y'all. This is the moment for change, and to be able to work with like-minded institutions and organizations to push for that vision. At the end of the day, that's what we're about.
We are so excited to kick this work off. Van, thank you for joining us today, and for our listening audience, thank you for joining us today. And to learn more about the work that we're doing with WCET and our other impact partners, follow us on social media and go to our website at presidentsforum.org.